was in college. Okay. Well, that way. All right.
Wait, everything more.
When I was in college, I took a course in ecology. And I ultimately decided to go into medicine, but if I hadn't gone into medicine, I thought I would go into human ecology. I've always thought that the design of the body and the design of the earth are similar. Now, how many are Floridians? Okay. If you're thirsty, would you like to eat an orange or an orange soda? Mostly people have orange soda. But a real orange has life chemistry. It is digestible, it is physiological, but the orange soda is water, acid, and high corn syrup sugar. And we'll see what that does for diabetes. Okay, now in our modern, I've been a doctor for 40 years, so I've been around. And basically, our medical profession is expert in treating chronic diseases. Hypertension, diabetes, atherosclerosis, obesity, degenerative arthritis, cancer, and all those other things. Now let's take diabetes as our prototype. A person with a family history of diabetes has a difficulty with insulin. Their insulin is not as effective. It's like a restaurant where you have a very good waiter who can handle 5 or 6 tables, and then he's out sick, and what happens to substitute? It takes 3 new waiters to make up the same thing. Okay? Now when you have diabetic genetics, your insulin is not as effective, so therefore your body has to make more insulin to do the job. So your pancreas is making insulin a lot, all the time. Your sugar is perfectly okay because your body has enough insulin. What happens? If you eat a lot of orange soda pop and pretzels and candy and cookies and cake and things like that, your constant overload of sugar is going to help you gain weight, particularly because the insulin is feeding it. That sugar is like dust or garbage, and you have to stuff it under the rug to make it clean. When you eat too much, and the insulin puts it into the cell, and you don't need it, you don't use it, you gain weight. Now, when a person has diabetes, after you have lived this way for 10, 20, 30 years, your pancreas cannot keep up with that amount of insulin production. So you run into a deficiency, and then the sugar goes very high in the blood, and then you come down with the disease diabetes. Okay? Now, normally your blood sugar is like 70 to 100. You feel fine, and your body handles it. When you have diabetes, sugars can go up to 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. Once I had a patient that was being taken care of by a visiting nurse, and they called me and said, "Oh, we did her sugar today and her insulin, and her blood sugar was such and such, it was like 400. And she said, do you want me to increase her insulin? I said, wait. What did she eat before you took that? Oh, I didn't ask her. Oh, go and ask her and call me back. This obese lady with heart failure had French toast with syrup and bacon and all the rest. Oh my goodness. And no wonder. You can't give her more insulin unless you have to stop putting that garbage in. So I call it sugar smog. When your blood sugar is sky high, it's like smog. It clings. You can't breathe. It stings. You feel horrible. And in diabetes, you feel horrible. You are tired. You have to go to the bathroom so many times. And what happens is the results of clutter. Sugar in the lens causes cataracts. Sugar in the retina blocks the blood vessels, and you get blindness. Sugar in the kidneys clogs up the kidneys, and you get renal failure. And the blood vessels get clogged, and the little nerves get damaged, so you can't feel in your feet, and you're numb, and you have burning sensation, and it's miserable because of sugar smog. Diabetic vascular disease is horrible. You get heart attacks, you get strokes, and the worst thing is peripheral vascular disease, where you get ulcers, and you have gangrene, and they amputate your feet, and you look like a wounded warrior. Now, in the world, we have clutter in the home, as you see. Clutter in the community. We have junk yards. This is not organic. Clutter in the body. Hardening of the arteries. Those precious little arteries that pump blood day after day, millions of times. They get clogged, and they get hard, and they get blocked. And so many diseases. Okay, this is an example of rheumatoid arthritis, where the joints are destroyed. This is an example of skin cancer, where the waste is out in the skin and the cancer is growing, and it's painful. Okay, what are we doing about it? Let's think. We give medications, very good medications. We have medicines to lower the blood pressure, so we can prevent strokes. We have medicine to lower the cholesterol, to prevent heart attacks. Good. We have medicines to alleviate symptoms like asthma, insulin, pain medicine, things like that. That's good. So people feel better. Oh, yes. When we've got a lot of junk and the germs come in and have a feast, we give antibiotics to kill the germs. Good. And of course, chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and we have psych medicines for depression and psychosis, and eczema and asthma and all that kind of stuff. Good. But have we really gotten to the bottom of the problem? No. So in the spirit of a law school, I'm going to call 3 witnesses. The first witness is going to be by, we're going to call him back from the dead here. Arnold Ehret was a German fellow who wanted to be a doctor. And he went to medical school, and what happened was and during medical school, he developed kidney disease, it's called Bright's disease, where the kidneys are damaged, and he's pouring out protein in the urine. I got a call, but I didn't answer. Okay. His father goes to the renowned German doctor. And they say, oh my goodness, you're losing all this protein in the blood, in the urine, you're getting deficient. So they give him Wiener schnitzels and all these things. And guess what? He got sicker and sicker and sicker. So he and his friend flew the coop and went from Germany to Italy and Algeria. No, they weren't terrorists, no. And in the Mediterranean climate, they had fruits and vegetables and figs and things like that. And Arnold Ehret had read in the Bible, in Genesis, that God in the Garden of Eden gave fruit for your food. And he believed that fruit and vegetables were cleansing. They were the healing substances. Basically, he believed that the ultimate diet was fruitarian. Okay. He wrote books, he lectured, he visited the United States, he went over all over Europe. He had a sanitarium in Switzerland. But his books were based on 1800s understanding of anatomy and physiology. So if you read his books, he believes that the body gets filled with, he felt like there was something like constipation of the blood vessels, and you got stuffed and stuff. So he really didn't understand medicine, but he had an idea, and by applying a cleansing diet, he got people better. And I've read his works many times, and it dawned on me, he was describing what we use today as renal dialysis. Okay? When a person has kidney disease, the waste builds up in their blood, and they have to go to the dialysis unit and have the blood go out into the machine and get cleansed 3 times a week, about 12 hours a week, to survive. Okay? Arnold Ehret didn't have IV equipment. There was no such thing as dialysis in the 1800s when he was sick. How did he do it? Well, just accidentally, he was really using dialysis because if you have fruits and vegetables, and the liquid of fruits and vegetables is dialysis fluid. And instead of putting it in your vein, you put it in your intestines, and you are going to basically have a blood rinse through your diet. And basically, he would help people go on a transition diet and do fasting and that kind of thing to cleanse the body. And he had good success. Now we go to a friend of Leslie's, Colin Campbell. He did the China study. How many know about the China study? Good. A plant-based diet with minimum animal protein results in less cancer and less heart disease. Okay? This was really an accidental discovery. Okay? He was onto this issue when he went to the Philippines and was on. He was in the Midwest, and he liked farming and nutrition, so he went on a research project in the Philippines, and they had a high incidence of liver cancer among children. And they identified aflatoxin, a toxic material from a plant, from a fungus that grew on corn in the Philippines, and that was the carcinogen that caused cancer. But when he looked at the data, the incidence of cancer among children was very high in the city and virtually none in the country, in the rural areas. Why? Because the further investigation revealed that in the country they were eating basically a plant-based diet, and in the city they were having a lot of meat. And there was a direct correlation between the cancer and the ingestion of meat. The China study itself was a snapshot of a culture that happened to have very healthy people. That came about, Zhou Enlai, the premier of China at the time, was dying of cancer. And he commissioned a study of the prevalence of 10 or 12 kinds of cancer all over China. And they made a cancer atlas. And, you know, in Beijing, the cancer rate was high, and in Shanghai, it was this and this. And then in all this area in the rural, virtually none. No, I'm giving a lecture. Thank you. Okay. So they said, well, why is this? What's going on? So they took 6,500 people in 65 counties, obviously 100 per county, and they had questionnaires, blood samples, physical examination, food analysis, you know, market analysis, and all that kind of stuff. And they pulled all the data together and standardized it for a 143-pound ideal man. Okay. I'll give you 10 seconds for all of those with photographic memories to look at this slide. Basically, the Chinese diet had more calories. They were eating more food, but yet they were not fat. They had more fiber, less protein, but the main thing is that the amount of animal protein was less than 1% of their entire diet. And that's what we just said. And 14.5% of the calories was fat, which is equivalent to 3 tablespoons of peanut oil. What is the American diet? The American diet has less calories. Okay. But they have only 12 grams of fiber because they have a lot of processed food. They have a lot more protein, which is mostly animal protein. And they have much more fat. Okay? How do we compare them? Okay, Chinese, a third more calories, but 3 times more fiber. Half amount of fat, 30% less protein, and it was plant-based. Now, what was it like here? How do we explain why the Chinese rural community on a plant-based diet was healthier? Their average blood cholesterol was 127 versus over 200 in America. They had a heart disease rate 17 times more in America than China. And for breast cancer, it was 5 times as much in the United States. Okay, so we don't want to go back to Greece quite yet. Okay, now, people don't believe, this is just accidental enough, you know, China, poor people anyway, but don't worry about it. And so, not many people took it seriously. And the study was in 1980. Now, 30 years later, what do we have? We have a recognition. Bill Clinton follows the diet of Colin Campbell. He's on a plant-based diet. There was an article in the newspaper just last week about that. Okay? So, plant-based diet has presidential support. Okay, now, after medical school, when you finally bought your new stethoscope and put on a little white coat and went out and said, I'm a doctor, we had the Hippocratic Oath. You know, I promise to take care of patients and listen to the nurse and all that kind of stuff. But the basic concept is primum nocere. First of all, do no harm. Okay. Now, we give all this lip service to Hippocrates, and I'm told that in addition for Hippocrates being the father of medicine, he's also the father of law. That name may not be correct. I don't know. So here he is. Look at his no wrinkles, very youthful look. Okay. What did he say? Okay, he didn't have a research lab. There were no government funding. He basically observed people and when they got sick. And he noticed that all the Spartan athletes who were good, they're not going to live on chicken soup. They need heavy, hearty meals. They have Campbell's hearty soup, right? But when a person's sick, if you give them a heavy meal, they're going to vomit, they're going to throw up, they're going to have diarrhea. So he already knew that diets changed when our bodies were well or not well, okay? So dilute food when you're sick, and what he described was what he called a healing crisis, okay? What is a healing crisis? No, it has nothing to do with John Boehner. A healing crisis is when your body goes through symptoms in order to get better. A perfect example is a child with measles or chickenpox. You have that feverish feeling, you may have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and a rash pours out. And he looked at a lot of patients and described every day what happened until they either lived or died. And in that description, the people that survived went through nosebleeds, hemorrhage, diarrhea, fever. He described malaria-type symptoms and stuff, and then they lived. But those who didn't died. And he said that if you suppress the healing crisis, the patient either dies or has a chronic disease. Well, that's why he's the father of medicine, because he taught modern medicine to always suppress the symptoms and make chronic diseases. Now, I was sick of that. I worked in a hospital for 17 years, running the clinic, and you're in your office, and the waiting room is as much as here. This is the waiting room of our clinic. And you're going to come in, and you're going to be in a hurry, and so basically, what medicine do you want? Okay. Bye. Bye. Really? No, you should have. You have to take your medicine. So you get that going. I was sick and tired of that. So I had a little revolution. I left the hospital and had my own practice, and I, from the very beginning, said, I want to develop self-reliant medicine. So, basically, I took Eric, Hippocrates, and Campbell and applied it. And I taught that principle. And so, we would basically help a person who had symptoms, who had a chronic disease, change their diet in a direction that their body could get rid of biological clutter. And we would change the diet and watch for healing crisis. All right. Now, basically, this is a non-diabetic clinic. Now, this is just kind of a framework. The exact diet that a patient would have would really have to be individual. But the basic principle was, let's get rid of the alcohol, the white sugar, the processed food, the junk food, and we're going to hold off on the meat, and the chicken, and the fish, and the milk, and the cheese. We're going to stop animal protein. We're going to move to whole grains and a lot of fruit and vegetables. My cleansing diet was 2/3 of your diet as fruits and vegetables. want too much protein. Now, we need vitamin B12. Animal protein is the source of vitamin B12. And in the China study, the people were having meat as flavoring, not the heavy doses that Americans have. And so, depending on the individual, sometimes we recommended continuing some eggs, continuing some yogurt or some fish, if they needed that, or I did not force them to become vegans. Sorry. Okay. Now, in the diabetic cleansing diet, we had cut down on the fruit. We didn't want to overload the blood sugar, but basically it was the same with less fruit. Okay. Now, this is the kind of view of the body. Okay, we're normally taught that the immune system are the policemen that kill germs. They're the SWAT team that attack when you have a strep throat. I don't really agree with that. I think that the immune system is the housekeeping department. Okay? And if you look at what Hippocrates said, and you look at modern medicine, we have kind of like 5 stages of how the immune system works. The first stage is represented as childhood diseases. A little kid is basically healthy, boom, they come down with the measles or mumps or chickenpox, a viral disease. And when they have symptoms, all the childhood diseases are basically healing crises that Hippocrates described. Okay? You have a rash, you pour out mucus, you cough up phlegm, you have diarrhea, something's coming out. Okay? If we don't pay attention and correct that, and we keep loading the system with garbage or whatever, we move to chronic diseases. Okay? We have asthma, we have chronic bronchitis, we have recurrent pimples and acne and things like that. There's something that's trying to come out, but it's not getting rid of it completely, so it continues on and on. Then we have autoimmune diseases, where the immune system is so fed up with this slob that's taking care of itself, that the immune system starts reacting when there are no infections. So you have lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, and you're in an attempt to clean your body, they do damage. It's like the wife trying to straighten the desk of her husband, and now he can't find his papers because she put them in order, and now he doesn't know where they are. The fourth immune process is what we call vascular disease, atherosclerosis, stroke. Where is that junk going? It's into the blood vessels, and you know the result. Cancer, I think, is the 5th stage. If you're so overloaded that the cells in an organ become like germs, bacteria, and start growing faster and faster and faster and out of control, that's like an infection where your body is transformed into like the germs. And chemotherapy is basically antibiotics against cancer cells. In the healing process, we want, okay, a person is fairly well, but they're not completely well, and they start a cleansing diet. Now, when they do that, it is a leap of faith. They have to change their habits. They have to go and buy their food. They can't go out to restaurants because they have to bring their own lunch and things like that. And they're going to get sicker before they get better. They watch for the healing process, and you get mucus coming out, you get fever, you get rashes, you get sick, and as Eric described, when that happens, people go back to their old diet, and they feel better, and they really like the junk food because it's too difficult for the body to get better. What I would like to, I was a doctor, I gave medicines and all that kind of stuff, but it should be minimal. when a kid has an infection, you give them a little Tylenol so they don't have a fever of 105 and go into seizures. But what you're giving is slowing down the healing process, and you do that on purpose so they can tolerate and get a good night's sleep. But that's not the cure. All right. Okay. This is a real case. I saw a patient who had eczema, scratching, allergic rhinitis, and asthma. Okay? Miserable. Now, I had nothing to do with her having a friend who was a vegan, who got her all excited about that, and she stopped eating meat and went through a cleansing process for over a long period of time, and all her symptoms disappeared. She got completely better. Then, her friend on her birthday gave her a cheese, crackers, gift basket, and she got sick all over again. When you eat meat, it's like cooking on charcoal in the kitchen. There's a lot of fumes and even carbon monoxide. And when you do that, the body has to do hard work to cleanse. When you have a plant-based diet, it's like cooking on a gas stove, and it burns clean. Okay, I have 3 minutes left. Okay, I was so gullible that I actually believed Erit and Campbell and Hippocrates. I redid my Hippocratic Oath, and I followed the diet I'm talking about, even though my wife doesn't like everything I eat. Okay, and it works, but it's hard. It's so simple, yet it's so difficult because you can't find decent food in an average restaurant unless you go to whatever. In conclusion, if we really think of the environment on Earth and the environment within us, they're exactly the same. We have to stop polluting our bodies. We have to start polluting the Earth. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to respect nature. And if we did that, guess what would happen? Instead of wiping out forests in Brazil to grow cattle for McDonald's, instead of having, chicken farms and cow farms and all this kind of stuff, and having high grazing, we would plant fruits and vegetables and have a much more plant-based economy. And I think it would do our health better and our world better.